The PETTLEP method or the PETTLEP model is a model of mental rehearsal that's quite popular in the sporting world. Athletes, professional athletes, and amateur athletes would be taught, particularly professional, because let's face it, in amateur sports, the finances generally aren't there to pay for psychologists to teach people how to use this stuff. But the PETLAP method is a model of mental imagery used in mostly in professional sports, whereby athletes have a framework and are taught a particular framework for imagining or picturing or rehearsing their performance. Now, it works quite well when the performance is quite structured and you know pretty much what you're getting into. So imagine, let's say, a darts player, or imagine a tennis player, or any field sport you care, or the skeleton event in the Winter Olympics. These events, and some are more specific than others. And what I mean by that is some are bounded to a greater degree by the rules and by the restrictions of the environment and so forth. So it's perhaps better able to predict one's performance in certain arenas than others. Others are there's more room for variation. Um, and this model was developed in around the early 2000s, 2001, by psychologists Holmes and Collins. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today in detail, in some detail, explain what PETLEP stands for. But firstly, a reminder, this is 30 days of mental skills, and I'm Larry McGuire, a work and organizational psychologist, and I teach people mental skills and how to develop the skills, not only to achieve what it is you want in your maybe in your education or your career, your working life, your business, and so on, but also in sport and in stage performance. I see people from all arenas of human behavior, professional behavior, whether it's the workplace, the traditional corporate workplace, or whether it's people who perform their work on the stage, or whether you're a sports person. I've seen people from various domains of work. So this stuff applies. These 9 mental skills that I'm talking about over the course of 30 days apply everywhere human beings perform, regardless of where it is, whether you're in medicine or whether you work for yourself or whether you're a stage performer. It doesn't matter. These things apply. These same skills apply. And it's not only about achieving something and being the best in your field. If you want that for yourself, well, then brilliant. Tear into it, right? Use these tips and ideas that I'm offering you over these 30 days. But it's not only about that, it's about living successfully outside of these professional domains. It's about forming good relationships with other people. It's about dealing with events as they arise, negative events, challenging events in one's life, and having the skills and the fortitude, the mental fortitude, the capacity to cope and to get through it and to deal with it and to just be okay, you know? You don't have to be a professional to apply these skills and mental imagery. And this is what I will challenge you in this particular session, is to think about mental imagery and how you will apply it in your everyday, ordinary life of dealing with people, of rearing your kids, of running a household, of performing your art as a hobby, whatever. It doesn't matter. This stuff applies. And what I've been talking about over the last couple of days is the idea that you and I and most people you know, I would hazard a guess of saying 99% of people, if not more than that, move through the world, through their day, and their imagination runs riot. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not helpful. Sometimes you imagine the best, sometimes you imagine the worst, and uh, by the very virtue of the fact that you don't expect things to work out for you, or maybe you do, but the most successful people that you know, whether they realize it or not, use mental imagery to their benefit. So when they think about tomorrow, they think about it going well. When they think about 10 minutes time, they think about things working out. When they think about trying this thing they haven't tried before, they think about the fun they're going to have in doing it. Now, this is all related to other concepts that I've mentioned over the last 17, 18 days. Growth-oriented mindset, for example, Carol Dweck's idea of self theories. It relates to emotional stability or agility, which I'm going to get into in subsequent sessions. The point is, what you think about, what you imagine, how you imagine your life will be tomorrow, next week, next year, has an influence over your behavior. In other words, if you imagine things not working out, you're not going to try very hard. I think you probably agree with that. If you have a big presentation to deliver to the boss tomorrow or to the regional team or whatever it happens to be, maybe you manage a lot of people and you're nervous about managing people. You've never managed lots of people like this before, and you're delivering a presentation about this new project that you're doing and you're shitting a brick, right? Well, there's some preparation you can do for that. And you know already that practice is the mother and father of all learning. Well, it's not really, but it's a nice way to capture the idea that becoming familiar with the scenario, the upcoming event, is helpful for you in actually performing well. So we're going to talk about how you might do that. In other words, your imagination and how you use it, has an effect, has an impact on the actions you take. So understand that. I'm not telling you to believe it. I'm asking you to entertain the possibility. And it boils down to common sense if you think about it, right? Although common sense is not that common, as the phrase goes. If I catastrophize about tomorrow, what are the chances of things turning out in my favor? Probably not great, because I'll be geared towards that. I'll be expecting that. All right, back to the PETTLEP method. So this method of mental imagery was developed first by Holmes and Collins in 2001, and they identified 7 components that need to be present in mental imagery in order for the performer, whoever it is, whether it's the surgeon performing keyhole surgery, whether it's the stage performer preparing for opening night, whether it's the footballer who wants to perfect set plays in the game, whether it's the business person who wants to deliver a good presentation on Monday morning to the regional team. It doesn't matter. Applying this method, learning it and applying it, can help you achieve better results. And it's been proven over and over. Not proven, I shouldn't use that word. It's been demonstrated. Proven is used a little bit too loosely, but I'm careful with it because, well, I'm not going to get into that today. So it has been demonstrated in study after study after study in various domains of human activity that this works, okay? So PETTLEP stands for P, physical aspects of the performance. E stands for the environmental aspects, the stadium and so forth, or the stage. T stands for the specifics of the tasks, okay? So the minute detail of each task that you need to perform. The timing matters. So timing of these tasks and these aspects. You can slow it down or you can speed it up, but we'll talk a little bit more about these in a bit. Learning of new tasks and how your mental imagery needs to develop as your skills develop and as your experience develops. The emotional aspects. So the how you feel when you're performing it, whatever it is, must be there when you imagine it in your mind. And the perspective. So are you taking your own first person perspective, as in I'm here, I'm performing right here now as me, or am I taking a third person perspective? I'm over there looking at me performing the routine or the drill. So it's rooted in the idea that mental imagery, MI, they refer to in the literature, mental imagery, or motor imagery, I should say, motor imagery, the imagination, the imagining, the closing one's eyes and picturing oneself performing the task, is correlated with the same brain activity as actually the physical activity. So the actual the carrying out of the task and the imagination of carrying out the task activates similar brain regions. The brain activity, neural activity in the brain, overlaps with the two of these, and so it's premised on this idea that when you imagine it, it activates the same neural areas of the brain. So this has been explored. Extensive research has demonstrated this, okay, that imagining the behavior and the actual execution of it activates the same motor regions, not only the brain, but the rest of the body. Some research found that heart rate and respiration are matched. So the physiological aspects, there's an overlap as well. It's been found in studies that if you imagine weight training, that you can have the same or similar gains as somebody who is actually weight training. Believe it or not, there's studies there to demonstrate this. I spoof you not, this is true. So what happens here, it's not woo woo, it's not some kind of mystical thing. It simply boils down to the fact that and I don't want to get too esoteric here, but it's worth saying this, that this world out here that we refer to as reality, the physical environment, it exists in mind, not out here in the world, in the objective world. Physicists have demonstrated this. Philosophers have spoken extensively about this. We know, physicists know, quantum physics has demonstrated this, that physical objects appear physical by virtue of the human nervous system. And when we experience something neurologically, physiologically, and emotionally, in reality, we can recreate that in our minds. So think about an anxious person. Think about you the last time you were anxious and how you imagined this and how you dreaded this event coming up tomorrow and how you moved around through your space and through your day thinking about this. It had completely taken over your mind and you felt sick in the pit of your stomach, imagining this thing that hasn't even happened yet, or remembering the event that happened last week or last year. Post-traumatic stress is an example of this, where we re-experience the trauma of the event that occurred in the so-called past. And when we do it now. And so your body doesn't know any different, all right, when you think about it and when you imagine it. When you imagine catastrophe, that's what your body expects, and you're training yourself to expect more of it. So nothing mystical here. It's simply, I shouldn't say simply, it's quite complex. I mean, I suppose ultimately we haven't figured it out, but what is mind? What is mind? Somehow we turn all this information out here in the world, in the game we play, in the work we do, in the relationships we have, we turn it into an experience, and this experience exists somewhere in mind. We don't know where the pictures are, all right? But the research is there, and it has demonstrated that imagining activates the same physiological, emotional, neurological regions of our experience, or aspects of our experience, as the actual event itself, right? I've got a bunch of references in today's article for you to check out. Timing has been found to be similar as well. So the timing of an event, when people imagine the carrying out or the execution of a task or an event, the timing of it matches. Research has shown that too. So some examples from the world of sport where athletes have used this method. A favorite one of mine is Lizzie Yarnold. She's the British gold medalist from Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014 for the skeleton. If you're familiar with the event, the athlete pushes the sled, in simple terms, right? Pushes the sled, they jump into it and they slide down the track at like 150 miles per hour, whatever it is, crazy speeds, right? So she was interviewed after she won the gold medal in Sochi, and she said, "It's been my dream for as long as I can remember. Every night going to bed, I'd slide down the track and go through it and visualize my dream. But I wouldn't visualize winning. I'd visualize the process. And so this is really important. It's not, you can, picture yourself up on the podium and what it would be like and imagine all of that. And you will hear athletes who have achieved great achievements in sport talking about this when they were kids. They pretend that they were winners at the Olympics, and that's valid. But she didn't. She just visualized the perfect run over and over and over and over and over again. And as she did that, her brain began to make these connections, these neurological connections, and her body began to experience the experience of getting it right and hitting it first time. So in that video interview, in that clip, you'll get it online. She talks about coming through on the fourth run and seeing her time and seeing that first place, and she just was blown away because that was the last run and she'd won gold. So she attributes a lot of her success to this act of mental imagery. She's not the only one though. Ronaldinho, the Brazilian footballer, he said, "What I do always before a game, always every night and every day, is try and think up things, imagine plays which no one else will have thought of, and to do so always bearing in mind the particular strength of each teammate to whom I am passing the ball." And that's important too. It's not only about you necessarily if it's a team sport you play, it's about others. So you imagine your success, you imagine others' success, and you imagine how you rectify problems as they arise. Might talk a little bit more about that in a bit. He goes on to say, when I construct those plays in my mind, I take into account whether one teammate likes to receive the ball at his feet or ahead of him, if he is good with his head and how he prefers to head the ball, if he is stronger on his right or left foot. That's my job. That's what I do. I imagine the game. And he was one of the best in the business during his time. Johnny Wilkinson, English rugby player, had something to say on it also. He said, "This visualization technique is a sort of clarified daydream with snippets of the atmosphere from past matches included to enhance the sense of reality. It lasts about 20 minutes, and by the end of it, I feel I know what's coming. The game will throw up many different scenarios, but I am prepared in my own head for them as I can be. If you have realistically imagined situations, you feel better prepared and less fearful of the unexpected." So when we don't know what's coming, we have some kind of negative anticipation, some anxiety. The more familiar we are with it, the more we can slot in and just rely on system one to kick in. Do you remember I was talking about system one, system two a couple of weeks ago now? Daniel Kahneman's thinking systems. So system one is automatic. That's the one you train. When you go training, you perform the physical tasks over and over and over again. Well, the imaginary tasks act in the same way. You build these neural pathways in your brain, not only in your brain and in your body, that you know what to expect. So anxiety is reduced as a consequence, right? So these aspects of PETTLEP, 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 a little bit more detail on them. The physical aspect, this emphasizes the replication of the physical environment as much as possible. That's why team sports will always endeavor to, in training, recreate match situations with referees and dressing rooms and geared up in their gear. The more you can replicate the match situation, the more realistic it will be, and the less anxiety players will feel when they go out onto the field. So the physical environment is important. And the goal here is to create the same neural pathways as would be in the game itself. The environment is the arena, is the field in which you play, the stage on which you play, developing familiarity with the space. The task, again, this focuses on the specifics of, let's say, a set play in the game, or your own particular execution of a skill. It's a detailed focus. You're focusing in on the finer aspects of the performance of the skill. So maybe it's In soccer, maybe it's dribbling the ball and beating tackles. Maybe it's a kick out. Maybe it's a corner set play. But it's how the individual executes that task in their mind is as close as possible to the actual task itself. The timing aspect, this emphasizes the synchronization of your mental rehearsal of the event with the actual thing itself. So this can be slowed down, and that can help, the research has said, whereby when you imagine yourself performing the task, it can be in slow motion, and that might help correct errors in the actual execution of the task itself. If it's a sprint you're doing, you're a track and field athlete, well then the mental imagery must match the same time period for the execution of that sprint. So your preparation, hitting the line, and the actual sprint itself. And you can also, if you have some aspirations about achieving a particular time in an event, you can use that in your mind. As you imagine yourself cross the line, you can see your time up on the clock. That's the timing aspect. The learning aspect, this is where you continually refine your mental imagery based on your experience and so forth, and the different techniques and skills that you develop over time. This ensures that your practice is up to speed, so to speak. So you're not sticking with the same image, the same execution of the task, as, when you began, as you would maybe 2 years later. It has to continually develop in time with you as an athlete. And this applies for the boardroom as well. How might the room be set up? What's the timing of you performing this presentation? What key elements do you need to hit? How is it you want to deliver this particular message? How do you want to capture it? How long is it going to take you? You can also imagine someone tabling challenging questions and you replying. If you're defending a PhD, for example, that's a nerve-wracking thing to have to do. Although PhD students would generally practice this in certain scenarios with each other, but you can also do it in your mind in advance. The emotional aspect is important to feel the same feelings as you would feel when you execute the task. So it's important here not to imagine yourself nervous, uptight, anxious, and so forth. You want to imagine yourself being calm, composed, collected, together, and in control. So that's important. So try not to, when you use mental imagery, to imagine or remember a time when it didn't go so well, because you're simply practicing that again. And then the final one, perspective. So from whose perspective are you taking? Are you taking this? Are you having this? Are you conducting this sequence of imagery? Is it from your own first person perspective? Are you imagining yourself in your own body performing it? Or are you over here at the back of the room looking at yourself performing the presentation, or on the stage, or whatever happens to be? There are the 7 elements of PETTLEP. I have references in the article at the bottom of this video. There's a link below where you can find out more about this and practice it for yourself. In short, if just to get going on this, it boils down to a simple principle. Imagine it going the way you want it to go. Imagine things turning out in your favor. Imagine yourself performing well. Imagine the result. Imagine the reaction of others being positive. Imagine people shaking your hand and saying congratulations, and them with a big smile on their face. Imagine your friends say well done. Imagine the result going your way, and imagine yourself being happy as a consequence. This all matters, and you'll find yourself as you sit there with your eyes closed with a big stupid smile on your face. That's why it's helpful to find your own private space to do this. in your bedroom or in your room, or find a toilet cubicle where you can be on your own to conduct this in private. That's another important aspect. So PETTLEP is one method you can use, but the principle applies no matter whether you're in sport, in business, work, regardless. Okay, I left this little guy up on the screen here today. I meant to switch it off. This is the framework. You can see we're at visualization or mental imagery. And we're coming around to the next few sessions to talk about anxiety and dealing with that, and how important that is. Mental imagery helps with that, by the way. I've mentioned it already. So today's session a bit longer than usual, so thanks for sticking with me. I'll see you tomorrow for day 19 and more on mental imagery. Okay, see you next time.